All right, so we will note that all trustees are present. That will suffice for roll call.
Except for
Trustee Wabi.
Except for Trustee Wabi. I have that noted. Thank you.
approval of the minute.
So moved.
Comment by the chair.
You have none? Internal audit, you've met before, so he's going to present the risk assessment and internal audit plan for fiscal year 22.
Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. Yeah, so I do want to spend a few minutes going over the audit plan for FY 21 or 22, I should say. I forget what year it is here. One thing I want to say, so this is being presented for your information, but if you have any questions or any thoughts on this, we definitely welcome your feedback on this, so we'll take that into account when we do our work. Excuse me. One thing I wanted to mention, there are a few pages in this presentation document that I'm just going to skip over. I think it's important to have the documentation in this document, but I don't think necessarily need to go over here at the presentation. So Janice, I'll tell you what page I'm on as I skip over, okay? So with that in mind, let's open up to page 4. We should be on this page right here. Yep, there you go. One of the things I wanted to talk about, especially for our newer trustees, is the different auditors that are involved in the overall audit process here. For the most part, there are two main sets of auditors. You have the external financial statement auditors, and you have the internal audit group, which is the group I work with. If you look at this slide here on the 4, you can see the external auditors are represented by the blue circle and the internal auditors, the red circle. Now, the external auditors, their main focus is on the financial statements. They're mainly focused on the processes and controls around the financial statement, and then, obviously, the accuracy and the fair representation of the financials. Now, we spend much more time on processes across the board, across here at the district, different functions. We get much more deeper into the weeds. We're looking more at process. We're much more process-oriented. You can see in the middle there, the red and the blue kind of crossover. There are some times when we kind of go up in your area and you come down into our area. We try to avoid duplication of effort, but we just talk to each other. They read our reports. We get feedback from them. They get feedback from us. So we kind of work together in that area. So, but I think generally we get good coverage. So we're not so much concerned about the financial statements because we know they're looking at those pretty thoroughly. So we work together. So we get good coverage that way. If you go to the next page, page 5, now this year will be a little different. Now you can have a third set of auditors that you will see appear at some time during the year, probably later in the fiscal year. Because there, as Tim mentioned at the Finance Committee meeting last month, there's going to be a management audit, and that's required by the charter. It's every 5 years, and this year, the type of management audit we're going to do is an entity level control audit is what it's called. And that's going to be based on the COSO internal control framework. And you can see the cube there right there. That's the basic cube that explains that framework. This is a very common framework. It's used by most entities in the U.S., especially publicly held companies, because they have additional reporting requirements for internal control. They use this framework to audit. We use it, the external auditors and the financial statement auditors use it as well. So for this management audit, the auditors are going to focus on the entity level controls within that framework, which are the control environment, risk assessment, information, communication, monitoring activities. So moving on to page 6, this gives a slightly different view of these entity level controls. You can see they kind of hover above the control activities by functional area. Internal audit spends a lot of time down in the control activities by functional area. I should say, so these entity level controls, they hover above there, and they basically set the tone throughout the district across the different functional areas. They're more pervasive, they're more general in a lot of cases. Again, like I said, we spend a lot of time down in control activities. Not to say we don't look at those, but we spend more time down there. So I think it's a really good idea that we have a separate set of auditors to really focus on these entity level controls. So I think it fits in nicely with the work we do and the external auditors do. So I think it does fit nicely in the overall program. Hopefully that helps you understand how the pieces fit together a little bit. Any questions there? With that, let's move on to page 7. So let's talk about the actual audit plan. The risk assessment methodology, how do we develop our plan? Now this slide basically moves from left to right. We take into account various inputs. We review the circumstances affecting the district. We look at prior engagements. We hold discussions in management. I met with all the directors. Meet with external auditors. I talk with our team. We have a lot of ideas throughout the year. We review the strategic plan. Look at the prior and current financial statements. We basically take all of that into account, identify the key areas, the risks, and then we evaluate the risks and develop an audit plan. If we move on to slide 8, this will explain it, I think, a little more clearly. So to mechanize this process, we have basically a huge spreadsheet that has all the different areas listed in there. And we basically have different attributes and factors for each area. And we assign points based on those areas, based on those attributes. So look to the left, you can see, well, what's the overall risk for the area? We assign points for that. Is it a key area? What are the risks? What's the date of the last audit? Was it 5 years ago? Was it 10 years ago? We assign points. Was the results of the last audit? Was it a really difficult audit? Was it clean? And so forth. Any recent developments, other factors. Is it a new area? Is it an area that we have trouble with? Anything like that. So we assign points. And then we fill out the spreadsheet, update the spreadsheet every year, and then the spreadsheet gives the results, like the top 10, 12 audits are based on points, and we develop an audit plan from that. Any questions?
Is he on? Is he on?
Yeah, just so the board members know, Brian Wabi has joined by Teams, so he's here now.
Good morning. So let's move on to slide 11. So again, this is going to work for our newer trustees. The overall internal audit cycle, we are constantly auditing throughout the year. We're always performing an audit. We always got one going on. So as we audit, we issue recommendations. The process owners respond with action plans. Basically steps they're going to take to respond to our recommendations. And then as time, until time passes, they implement those changes. And then we come back and do follow-up procedures later on. So we report back to you every year. It's in October every year. We'll report to you which items are still open and the progress the process owners are making on different recommendations. So we do keep track of what's going on there. Any questions there? With that, let's move on to page 13, which is the actual list of engagements in the audit plan. Now, these are not listed in any particular order. They're just random. So there's not by risk or chronological. They're just completely random. So the first audit is our safety program. As we have, this is mainly related to our operations personnel. They do a lot of work out in the field. They're in sewers, doing rehab work, doing repairs, doing construction. So there's a definite need for safety program here at the district. So we last looked at this in 2018. So this only applies to our employees. We are not responsible for contractor safety. Just want to make that clear. And also, the district is not subject to the guidelines, requirements, and oversight procedures of OSHA. That's just basically the way the law was written back originally in 1970. It excluded state and local government entities or employees of state and local government entities. But however, best practices still apply. We still want to follow best practices for, OSHA. So we do use those best practices when we do the audit. As far as risks, I think the risks are fairly self-evident in this area, so I'm not going to go through those. So the next area that we're going to audit is DEC. That's an engineering group. DEC, the Industrial Pretreatment Group, we call it IPG. Their role is they monitor and inspect our industrial customers. So they keep an eye on our industrial customers. They also collect and calculate data for those industrial customers. So we have additional billings for those industrial customers, and they provide that data to our billing and finance group so they can bill them every month. So that's part of their duties as well. So the last time we looked at this area was back in 2017. So I guess I should mention this group is one of 5 individual groups within that DEC division. There's 5 different groups. We looked at 3 of those in our audit last year. Some of the trustees were not here for that, but we split it up because they were so complicated. We try to keep them separated. We take a few at a time. So the risks here are, industrial customers are not in compliance with the EPA and DNR requirements. As I said, IPG monitors these customers. Another risk would be the data information that we collect and calculate is not, accurate or provided timely and so forth. So we look into that whole area. Any questions there? Page 14, the next engagement will be procurement. That's an area that's in finance. So this is the process for selecting vendors and suppliers. It's the process to select them to make purchases from. So it's really focused on the selection process. Who are we going to do business with? Last time we looked at this area was in 2018. Now, our second bullet under general is really not written correctly, I don't think. So what it really should say is a large volume of purchases or execute as a result of this process. Again, we're really focused on the selection process here. The risk is the procurement process ensures a not effective design implemented. This can become a high-profile error if it's not done properly. If selection not performed in a manner that's fair and equitable to all the parties who are trying to participate, it can become an issue. So, make sure district stakeholder interests are adequately protected, costs are adequately contained, and so forth. Any questions there? Page 15, administration of our healthcare plan. We last looked at this area in 2018. A little information for our newer trustees. Our healthcare plan is self-funded. In other words, any claims that come through, we fund those claims. Basically, the provider. I'm sorry.
No, I think that was feedback.
Oh, feedback, okay. So if I go to the doctor files a claim with the insurance company, we send the money to the insurance company pays the claim, so to speak. So basically the insurance company really, in this case, is a third-party administrator for us. We call it TPA. And our TPA for our health plan is Cigna, and they have been since 2012. Their current contract is through 12/31/23. I think you guys just recently renewed that back in January. So this is probably a good time to look at this overall contract and see if it's operating properly. Some of the risks are the TPA procedures are not in compliance with the contract and provisions of the plan. Our procedures are not adequately monitoring the performance of TPA, and then also the procedures and process between the two of us, the two groups, our group here in HR and then the TPA group are not designed properly. They really have to work together pretty well. There's a lot of things going back and forth, so we want to make sure that is working seamlessly and there's nothing falling through the cracks. So we look heavily at that. Any questions on that? Next area is business continuity. I'm sorry, on page 16. Is business continuity and disaster recovery. It's an IT area. So what we're talking about here, in the case of any kind of disaster, can we keep operations going? Can we recover data if we need to? So we last looked at this in 18, but it was only the payroll area. We're really waiting for, we do have some procedures in place, they do backup data and so forth, but they don't have a finalized program in place right now, and they're working on that right now. So we're waiting the completion of some infrastructure and network modifications for this area, so we're gonna address this as soon as possible, probably next winter, we're gonna get to it. I think they're working with a consultant right now to try to really get a formal program in place. So obviously some risks are, operations are interrupted, services interrupted, that kind of thing. Any questions there? Next item is a review of overhead rates. Now, I mentioned overhead rates in this review when I presented the construction management design contract audit last month meeting. One of the contractors billed through the cost plus invoicing method. One of the things they do is they charge for overhead, and they use an overhead rate that's calculated based on a cost pool. So what we do every year, for every contractor that does this, we look at their overhead rate and check it. We check the calculations and look and make sure it's, makes sense, it meets certain guidelines and so forth. We either say it's okay, or we push back and ask questions, or sometimes, in some cases, we've had the rate reduced. So we look at those every year. So that's what this is. So any questions there? Page 17, this is, I think, the last item in our audit plan, network vulnerability and attack and penetration. IT is the processing, obviously, in that area. So what we do here is it's all about cybersecurity. So we use ethical hackers, what they call ethical hackers, and we basically attack the system. We try to break in and get into as much information as we can. We do it from the outside, and we also start with the log on the inside, and we try to move around in the system and try to get the stuff we shouldn't be able to get to. So the guys we have do are pretty good. That's all they do. They just try to hack. So they're really good at it. So I think this is a really important area. We just finished one of these a couple months ago. We're going to have a report on that next meeting, which will be August. We'll report at our committee for this. So this is an ever-evolving landscape, as we all know, a very important area. So best practice is to form this annually. So we're doing this every year. So I think it needs to be done. So obviously the risks are, the system, the district network is breached, operations interrupted, private data could be exposed. We all have that ransomware threat out there, so we hear more and more of that. So I think it's really good for us in IT to stay as far ahead of the curve as we can. So any questions there? That is it for the plan. Moving on to page 18, so I'm going to tell you about, we are in the process of completing FY21. Again, we'll have that, we should say attack and penetration and phishing audit. So we did some phishing testing as well. We'll have that ready for you for presentation at the August meeting. Revenue, we'll have that ready for September. And right now we're working on change orders and inventory. So our year kind of runs from October to October every year. So any questions? That's all I have. I appreciate the time. Thank you, everyone.
I'll just add one thing, just to make sure I'm clear. The introduction, the presentation on items page 1 through 6 around the COSO framework, that's part of a management audit that's required by charter every 5 years. And it requires us to hire an outside consultant. So that was one piece. Everything you saw from page 7 after is what Todd does on an annual basis. He explained that as far as priorities, where we got there. So there's kind of two different processes on here. I think for every one of you, this is the first time we've done a management audit since the last one was 5 years ago. So that's what those first 6 pages are about. Tim will be coming to you with who that, we haven't done it yet, right?
No, we'll do the RFP. Last month, Trustee Wabi asked to share the RFP with the trustees before it went out, so we should have that finished, I think, this week. We'll send it out for your review and comment to you before we put it on the street, and then I'll come back and present you the results of the RFP, and then we'll get started. And you can expect those auditors will probably want to talk to you as well as a broad range of employees. It'll be pretty comprehensive. Okay, that is all the business we had for the audit committee meeting. Trustee Watson.
Next meeting, tentatively Tuesday, August 3rd.
Hey, thank you. You can move your stuff.
Ready to go for program management.
Good morning. Welcome to the 219th meeting of the Program Management Committee of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. Can I get a roll call?
And we'll note that all trustees are present. Thank you.
Can I get approval of the meeting minutes for June 1st, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any other business to be discussed?
We have the engineering department agenda items. Good morning. My name is Brad Nevoy. I think I've met most of you. I'm Assistant Director of Engineering here at MSD. I'm filling in for Rich, who's on vacation today. So the first agenda item that we have today is the CSO volume reduction green infrastructure Heritage House Apartments. There should be a map in your packet. The budget supplement sheet from last year, as well as a map of the project area. The Heritage House Apartments are just north and west of here, behind Wells Fargo. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter into an agreement with Fresh Coast Capital LLC, doing business as Green Print Partners, to provide financial assistance through the Green Infrastructure Grant Program or construction of green infrastructure. The purpose of this project is to reduce combined sewer overflows into the Mississippi River per the long-term control plan. The project will reduce runoff volume with the installation of 3 bioretention basins. Total cost for the project is estimated at $660,000, and Fresh Coast Capital is requesting approximately $660,000 reimbursement for the cost of the green infrastructure. This item and the next item are very similar. They're both related to green infrastructure, and they both are being funded by a previous appropriation that we did last year for green infrastructure. We are requesting that the board approve an ordinance for which $660,000 is being encumbered from a previous ordinance, 15469. Please stop me if you have any questions along the way. The next agenda item is CSO volume reduction green infrastructure, West End Clinic. This is project number 13271. It's very similar to the last one. This is in the Walnut Park East neighborhood. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter into an agreement with West End Clinic to provide financial assistance through a green infrastructure program for the construction of green infrastructure. The purpose of this project is to reduce combined sewer overflows to the Mississippi River per our long-term control plan. This project will reduce runoff volume with the installation of 2 permeable pavement areas. The total cost of this project is estimated to be $66,000, and West End Clinic is requesting approximately $59,400 reimbursement for the cost of the green infrastructure. Again, there should be a map of the site that shows the 2 permeable pavement areas and the location where this is located. Again, we are requesting the board approve an ordinance for which $59,400 is being encumbered from a previous ordinance in fiscal year 21. That was ordinance 15469. The next agenda item is stormwater infrastructure repairs. This appropriates funds for small stormwater infrastructure repair projects to be bid through our purchasing department. This work to be done consists of the repair, replacement, and construction of stormwater inlets, manholes, sewers, and other infrastructure as identified by the operations and engineering departments at various locations throughout the district. This appropriation is for $6 million and will address stormwater projects as they are identified. Contractors will be hired by the rules through the purchasing ordinance, and staff will periodically update the Board of Trustees in regards to this appropriation. Last year, the money that was spent in this area, this is an annual appropriation, approximately 26% of the projects and 25% of the dollars went to MWBE firms. A large portion of this project will be done through our small contractor program, which has been very successful in getting MWBE participation. This is a collaborative effort between operations and engineering to get this work done. The next project is the Harlem Bayden Relief Phase 4, Ebert Design, project number 10641. This appropriates additional funding and authorizes staff to amend a design contract with Parsons Water and Infrastructure in the amount of $450,000. Currently, they have 32.65% MWB participation, and this project did have a goal of 20% at that time. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter into amendment number 17 to contract 10897 with Parsons Water and Infrastructure for the Harlem Bayden design. The project consists of the design and preparation of construction documents for approximately 24,600 feet of 12 to 96 inch diameter storm sewers, approximately 8,100 feet of 10 to 66 inch diameter sanitary sewers, a 9-acre, 2.5 million cubic earth stormwater detention basin, land planning for future use in the area not needed for detention, and appurtenances. This project will alleviate basement backups from hundreds of homes. The preliminary cost estimate is $28.3 million for this work. This is a multi-phase project. This is a planned appropriation that we had for this project. A lot of the work in this phase, the work that they're doing now, is really juggling the phases. As we go through this multi-phase project, some property owners had concerns with where we're phasing it, so we're going to alter those phases to accommodate their need. The next project is Pump Station Replacement Projects, Phase 1, 11701 is the project number. This appropriates additional funds and authorizes staff to amend a design contract with HR Green Incorporated. The amount of the appropriation is $150,000. This was a planned appropriation. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter into amendment number 5 for contract 20205 with HR Green for the design of projects in the CIRP. The purpose of this project is to replace deteriorating pump stations P708 and P702 in Earth City. The construction cost estimate for this project initially was $1.7 million. Construction is now anticipated to begin in fiscal year '22. Some additional comments: the appropriation of $150,000 for design services is equal to the proposed funding presented in the CIP budget. The original pump station project was split into 2 phases to allow for utility coordination and relocation. The first phase was P702 project. It was started in construction, and due to unforeseen circumstances, construction was stopped. We ran into a considerable amount of groundwater that we didn't anticipate. And this project will need to be rebid. This appropriation is for updating the plans for the rebid and to make design changes due to right-of-way acquisition and construction phase services. These services do include construction field surveys, review of shop drawings and submittals, responding to design questions and changes during construction. The project is expected to be funded by bond proceeds. The next project is the St. Louis Combined Sewer Overflow Program, Corps of Engineers, Phase 2. This is project 13608. This agenda item appropriates funds and authorizes staff to provide a local match to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In the amount of this appropriation is $10,000. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter into contract 22049 and appropriates the local match needed for the Corps of Engineers study effort to make additional CIRP projects eligible for the federal program. The Federal Water Resource Development Act of 1992 authorized the Corps of Engineers to design and construct combined sewer overflow control and reduction projects in the city of St. Louis. The original act authorized $15,000 in federal spending. Subsequent amendments to the act prior to 2020 increased the authorization to $35 million and broadened the scope of the projects to include combined sewer areas in both St. Louis City and St. Louis County. The most recent Water Resource Development Act, or WRDA, legislation increased the authorization to $70 million. Since the inception, approximately $35 million in federal funding has been allocated to improving combined sewer systems with the Corps' bidding, awarding, and managing various construction contracts. The act requires that the local sponsor, MSD, provide a 25% local match for this federal funding. This is really a result of lobbying done on the federal level, coordinated through our legal department, and we've been very successful in securing funding with the Corps of Engineers. The next agenda item is the Bissell, Coldwater, Missouri, Merrimack Sanitary System Improvements. That's project 11144. These final 4 agenda items are all very similar. They're all related to the watershed consultant contracts. I'm sure most of you are pretty new. I'm not sure if you've seen these before. The watershed consultant contracts were developed when we were faced with the consent decree and the amount of work that we had to process in regards to the design function. We came up with these contracts, started them in 2012, 2013, and then the final one in 2014, with the idea that the neighborhood scale or the geographic contracts, which are 3 of them, would end in about 10 years. So we're approaching that time period. One of the contracts with Parsons Water and Infrastructure, they have really not any new projects. They're supporting the Deer Creek Tunnel project as it gets through construction, and then that contract will cease to exist. The agenda item here and the next one are related to two others that are geographic based. They handled all the sanitary projects really throughout the district related to the consent decree. They also handled additional management and of the projects that we used to do ourselves. So this is the last year that these two contracts will get new projects, and then they'll just wrap up supporting the construction as they get completed. So this first agenda item, again, is the Bissell, Coldwater, Missouri Merrimack sanitary system improvements. You should have a map in your packet that shows the different dots of where the projects are. Much like the name would lead you to believe, they handle all the sanitary projects related to the consent decree in those 4 watersheds, those 4 ring watersheds around the district. This agenda item authorizes staff to amend their existing contract, and in addition, the other agenda items related to the 11 new projects are shown below. We started doing this a couple years ago. We create a summary of all the sheets on this one sheet with this table. I'll kind of walk through that so you understand what's in front of you here. Again, this contract is with Wood Environmental and Infrastructure Solutions Incorporated. The chart that you see below has the page number, project name, location, description of the various project, the purpose of the project, our budget amount, our appropriation amount, what the future construction is anticipated to result out of the design, MWB participation, and then the firms that are participating, MWB firms. The first line that you see on each of these, you will see, is really the parent contract and where we handle the management that they're doing for us related to the various projects. And then starting with Arv Ellen, the various 11 projects that continue on to the next page, those are lump sum design projects. In total, Wood Environmental will be designing around 15,300 feet of sanitary sewer, 256 feet of storm sewer, the removal of private inflow from 24 properties, the rehabilitation of almost 200,000 feet of sanitary sewers, 404 manholes. They're going to address 2,000 service connections and 30 point repairs. This work on these design projects upon the completion will result in the estimated $28 million in construction, and will address overcharged sanitary sewers and alleviate hundreds of basement backups. All of these projects that you're seeing are required by the district's SSO master plan, which is related to our consent decree on the sanitary side. Any questions on that? This total appropriation for the design services on this contract for fiscal year 22 is $2,250,000, which is equal to the budget amount in our fiscal 22 budget supplement. The total MWB commitment is 35% over the life of the contract. That was put in place when they were originally procured, and the resulting MWB participation after this amendment is approximately 37.72%. Any questions on that one? The next agenda item is very similar to that. This is for the LeeMae sanitary system improvements, project number 11145. They cover the LeeMae watershed, or the inner ring outside the combined area of our service area. This authorizes staff to amend an existing contract with Burns and McDonald Engineering Incorporated. You should have a map. There's 2 new projects that are associated with this contract. This is the second of the 4 watershed consultant contracts we're bringing you today. Again, they cover the geographic area known as the LeeMae watershed. The total appropriation for design services on these 2 new projects in the management is $922,000, which is equal to our fiscal '22 budget. The total appropriation, total MWBE commitment on this contract is 29%, which was put in place when they were originally procured. The resulting MWBE participation after this amendment is 33.72. Again, there's the initial renewal of the contract and 2 new projects that are being brought, the Mulberry Creek and the Woodson Sanitary Relief. In total, those will result in about 7,250 feet of sanitary sewers. The work on these design projects upon the completion will result in about $6 million of construction contracts. In addition to that, it will address hundreds of wet weather basement backups and remove 2 constructed sanitary sewer overflows. All this work is related to our SSO master plan, which is tied to our consent decree. The next agenda item is the lower and middle river to pair CSO control systems. These last 2 are a little bit different than in the initial watershed consultant contracts. These are related to the big CSO tunnels and the CSO combined sewer overflow system that we have in place. These are long-range projects that are going to be here a while. So these contracts will continue to exist for quite a while as they support those projects. This agenda item appropriates funds and authorizes staff to amend the existing contract. The existing contract is with Jacobs Engineering Group Incorporated. You should have a map that shows the project that they have here. This is a watershed consultant contract. It's project-based, related to the tunnel. This is the contract that has designed the large lower middle river to pair storage tunnel that will come later in our program. In addition, they have other projects related to that and the Jefferson Barracks tunnel that you're going to see here. They're supporting the 1 project, Jefferson Barracks, in construction, and they continue to support the overall program, waiting for that large tunnel to be constructed. The total appropriation for the design services for the lower and middle river to pair control system improvements for fiscal year '22 is $820,000, which is equal to the budget we had for fiscal year '22. The total project MWB commitment on this contract is 22%. The resulting MWB participation after this amendment is 23.10%. The last agenda item that I have is similar to the last one. This is a contract to work on large CSO storage and addressing CSOs throughout our system. That work's all pertinent to our long-term control plan as part of our CD. This is the river to pair tributaries and upper river to pair CSO controls and lower Merrimack system improvements. This is project 11153. This appropriates funds and authorizes staff to amend an existing design contract with HDR Engineering Incorporated. Again, this is a watershed consultant contract. It's project-based, tunnel and CSO related. They currently have 3, I call them tunnel prep contracts, projects that are going to address CSOs throughout our system, and then 1 construction phase services to support our lower Merrimack tunnel that's currently in construction. Of the 3 new projects that you see there, they will design around 12,330 feet of sanitary sewers, around 4,400 feet of storm sewers. The work on these design projects upon the completion will result in $55 million in construction. This will address overcharged sanitary and combined sewers, relieve wet weather basement backups, and eliminate interceptors associated with 2 combined sewer overflow. All of these projects are required to comply with our long-term control plan in accordance with the CD, with the exception of the Lower Merrimack, which is related to the SSO master plan. That's all the agenda items we have for you today. Do you have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Is there any other business to be discussed? Thank you, Brad. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you.
All right. We'll adjourn, we'll get
Can we have a roll call, please?
All right, we'll note that all trustees are present.
And may I please have a motion for approval of the minutes from June 1st?
So moved.
Second.
Minutes are approved. Next up is the portfolio update.
All right, I'll take just a minute to go through the monthly portfolio update. This is the multicolored one-page document we look at every month, just to look at our operating portfolio. So I'll start in the upper left. Total par amount of the portfolio is about $658 million. It's about $10 million more than last month. We brought in more money than we spent, so that went up. That's not unusual when we have months where we don't have big debt payments or something like that going on. Yield to maturity is up just a little bit from last month. Interest rates have been increasing. Our portfolio turns over a little bit. So we went up from about 53 basis points to 57. The benchmark made a bigger jump because we saw treasuries increase, especially in the 2 to 3 year range significantly. And that entire portfolio turns over every month. So that's going to go up and down faster than our portfolio because the whole thing turns over every month. So 2 to 3 year treasuries, each went up in that 10 to 15 basis point range, roughly. And so the benchmark went from 15 basis points to 27. Our weighted average maturity is up a little bit. Most of our new investments are around 2 years. So our weighted average maturity went from just under a year to just over a year. That's that WAM number. And we're only investing in highly rated paper. So you see our average credit rating matches the benchmark at AA+, very strong. Over in the upper right, this is really where we look to see if we're in compliance, and we are in compliance with the portfolio policy. We're allowed to be up to 100% in U.S. Treasury bonds. We're at 53%. Everything else is under the policy limit. We are not making a lot of changes here, except for going out on the curve just a little bit, like the 2 year investments I just talked about, just to get a little bit more yield, and because we have room there. Fund summary in the bottom left just shows you kind of where the funds are. The bulk of it is always going to be in the operations. And the maturity distribution is just a comparison of our portfolio to the benchmark. We're the blue lines, portfolio is red lines. The portfolio, again, is all 1 to 3 year treasuries. We run the range a little bit more because we need funds for operations, pay payroll, pay for projects. We always have a significant amount of our maturities in the 0 to 6 month range. By policy, we're only allowed to go out 5 years, not more than that, and the average weighted average maturity of the portfolio can't be more than 3 years. So we're usually going to be a little more front-heavy than the benchmark is. But we are in compliance with the policy. Any questions about that? All right, so the rest of this meeting is going to be really handled by Bill Winningham of Milliman. Milliman is the actuarial firm we use for the pension plan. And so annually, two of the reports that they put together are the actual evaluation report and the GASB 6768 report. So Bill Winningham is on Teams. Bill, are you sharing your screen?
Yeah, I can share my screen.
Okay, if you share your
Go
screen,
ahead.
that'll give Janice a little break. And we have paper here as well, so if you can just kind of make sure you let us know where you are in the reports to make sure we can all follow along, that'd be great.
So are you seeing my screen now?
Right now it's black. If we need to pull it up, I think we have it electronically here too.
Yeah, we might need to do it on yours. Looks like there's something not working quite right here. Let me unshare.
Okay, unshare, then we'll go back. Was that your screen that was up, Janice? Okay.
Yeah, I have all the change numbers written down, so I'm ready to go.
Okay, hold, give us just a sec to get our report back up there. You might still be sharing, Bill, or it's stuck.
Yeah, I have mine turned off. My sharing's off. I could try leaving and coming back on real quick.
All right, let's give it a shot. We're having trouble pulling up ours here. When he pulled off sharing, did it knock off your sharing? Do you need to share? There we go. You let Bill in, please. Thanks. All right, we got it, Bill.
Okay, great. All right. So, yeah, if we, as Tim mentioned, we do two different valuation reports for the pension plan each year. One is the report you have in front of us, which is the actuarial valuation, and that's where we primarily what we're doing there is tracking the funding progress of the plan and calculating the contribution requirement for the upcoming year. So if we could turn ahead to page 4, which is page 6 of the PDF. There we go. And there at the top of the page, you can see we have a 2-column summary of the contribution requirement. For last year, the contribution requirement was just under $13,400,000, and that decreased for 2021 down to $12,144,000. And the primary reason for this decrease is the assets, when measured on the 3-year actuarial smooth value, returned 7.7% versus the assumed return of 6.75%. If you could scroll down just a little bit, you can see that the market value, on a market value assets basis, the assets increased from $296 million to just under 327 million, and that was a 12.5% return for that 1 year. And then again, on the actuarial basis, where we smooth gains and losses over a 3-year period, that increase was 7.7. Moving ahead to the next page, we have a discussion of the major sources of actuarial gains and losses. We had a big gain on the actuarial value of assets of 3.7 million. Salary, as one might expect during the pandemic, salary increases were a little bit lower than expected, so we had a gain there. And then there was an overall liability gain of 4.4 million from other sources, and those other sources are primarily mortality. So we had more deaths than expected, and the cost of living adjustment for the retiree benefit payments was 1.8% for that year versus the expected rate of 2.5%. Okay, scrolling ahead another page, we have a 2-column summary of the key valuation results. At the top of the page, you can see the active member headcount went from 493 down to 450. This is expected because the pension plan was closed to new entrants January 1, 2011, and so that active headcount is continuing to go down. And this is versus a total population, Tim. I think it's right around 900 to 1,000 employees.
Right.
Then down below that, you can see the return on assets. So we had 2 good years in a row from the market value of assets, 16.1 and then 12.5 for this latest year. And then on the actuarial smooth value of assets, that was 7.3 and 7.7. On the actuarial basis, that means we still have $19 million of deferred gains that have yet to run through the smoothing method. So we'd expect that actuarial value of assets to do well for the next year or two. Okay, then I'd like to scroll ahead to page 8. Well, this is the reconciliation of assets, and that's perfect, from the prior year to this year. And what I wanted to point out here, you can see the contributions in the income section of 13.4, exactly what was calculated in the prior year valuation report. I just wanted to compare that to the disbursements, where we have benefit payments to retirees of 19.3 million, and then various expenses of 1 million, for a total payout of 20.3. So this plan, even though we are in a very conservative funding policy, has a negative cash flow. What that indicates is the plan is what's known as a mature plan, and this is where you would expect to be for a plan that's been closed for 10 years to new entrants. It's going to become more and more retiree heavy. Okay, move ahead again to page 9. This is just showing the workings of the actuarial smooth value of assets where gains and losses are recognized over a 3-year period. Go ahead to page the next page 11, which is page 13 of the okay, so this is where we calculate, that's the right page. This is where we calculate the required contribution for the year. So at the top of the page, the present value of future benefits. This is based on the actuarial assumptions of mortality, pay increases, when employees are going to retire, et cetera. The total liability of the plan for service earned to date and service earned up to retirement for all active employees, plus the liability for retirees, is $391 million. Of that, the next line 2, 35 million of that is due to service expected to be earned by the current set of employees in the future, leaving the accrued liability as of the valuation date of $356,407,000. we first compare that to our actuarial value of assets, which is $307 million, leaving an unfunded liability amount of $49.2 million. The next, now we are paying, the district is paying for that unfunded liability over a layered 20-year amortization period. So every time there's a gain or loss on the assets during evaluation, that gain or loss is amortized over a 20-year period. And the sum of those amortization payments are shown on line 8. So we're paying just under $6.9 million amortization payment on that $49 million of unfunded liability during this valuation year. To that, we add what's known as the normal cost, line 6, and that represents the value of benefits being earned by the active employee group for the current year, for 2021. So you add the $4.4 million in benefits being earned for the year to the $6.9 million amortization of the unfunded liability, and you come up with a actuarial determined contribution amount as of January 1 of $11,376,000. We add interest to the expected date of payment, and you end up with a contribution amount of $12,144,000. Of that, and that represents 35% of the payroll for the employees covered in this plan. Is there any questions on that?
Not at this time.
Okay. If you go to the next page, and this is just showing that I talked about those 20-year layers. It's just showing the amortization of those gains and losses as they arise over the years, and showing that they are getting paid down. For example, when this methodology began in 2008, there was an initial balance of $28 million in unfunded liability, and of that, there's $12,400,000 remaining. This works. Each of these layers is just like works just like a home amortization. Okay, we could scroll ahead to page 15, which will be there we go. We have a summary of the key actuarial assumptions here. The most important assumption in the whole evaluation is that discount rate. That's 6.75. That's based on the long-term expected return on the plan's asset allocation. The next most important one is the mortality assumption, which is just at the bottom of the page. That's based on that was just updated last year, and it's based on the most recent Society of Actuaries mortality study for governmental plans such as this, which is projected generationally using a mortality improvement scale. And turning ahead to page 18, for those of you that are kind of new to the pension plan, this has a summary of the key plan provisions, what the benefit formula is, what the disability benefit is, and what benefits are when an employee dies, that sort of thing. And then we could go ahead to page 24. This is a age and service grid based on 5-year age and service buckets of the employees that are remaining in the plan. Of course, you can see there's nobody under 10 years of service since the plan has been closed for 10 years. The shading just represents where the biggest pockets of employees are. The key takeaway from this exhibit is the majority of these employees are eligible to retire at any time. So anybody who's 55 and over that's in the plan can retire. And then anybody whose age plus service is equal to 75. So if someone's 40, is 50 years old and they have 25 years of service, they are also eligible to retire. So that makes up like 70% of the employees are in that eligible to retire group. Again, indicating the plan is mature, as we discussed earlier. And then scrolling ahead, one more page, we do a detailed reconciliation of the head count from the prior year to the current year. Nothing too exciting here, but if you want to know what's going on with the population, it's all detailed here. And then finally, I just wanted to briefly cover the graphs at the back of the report, starting on page 29. So here you can see on the member data, you can see the how the population has been decreasing over the last 5 years. Turning ahead to the next page, we have the market value of assets versus the actuarial value of assets, and you can see how that's grown over the last 5 years. We've gone from 250 million all the way up to 327 million in just the last 5 years. Here we have a 5-year history of the, if you can scroll down just a little bit, of the asset return. You can see the volatility in that market value return, and then down below that on the actuarial value, you can see how that smoothing method kind of mutes that return so that you don't, the purpose for that is not to have that contribution requirement swinging all over the place and causing budgeting problems. And then to the next graph, we can see the progress that's been made on the fund percentage over the last 5 years. It's gone from 82% up to 86.2. Now, what I'd like to point out on here, during this same period, the district has become more conservative with their actuarial assumptions. The investment rate of return has been decreased to 6.75 during that period, and then there was a significant update to the mortality assumption during that time as well. So if the assumptions had been kept the same, that funded percentage would be even higher, but then we wouldn't be reflecting reality. So moving down one more.
What year did the rate of return assumption change?
We changed it a few times in the last few years. We went to 6.75. It wasn't last year. I think it was 2019.
I think it was 2
Does that sound right, Bill?
Yeah. And then before that, it was at 6.9, and then before that, it was at 7.0%.
Thank you.
And that's something we look at every year, and we work with the fund's investment consultant to look at capital market assumptions. And basically, Tim and I have a discussion about this every December or so when we do the budgeting, the contribution budget for the next year. So that was basically what I wanted to cover on the main funding valuation. And I'd like to take any questions if anybody has any other questions.
All right, doesn't look like there are any on the actuarial valuation.
Okay, so we'll move on to the GASB 6768 valuation. This valuation is for the accounting side, so this is what impacts the balance sheet for the district. A lot of these numbers, because the plan is well funded and conservatively funded, we are allowed to use the same assumptions that are used for funding. So when we look at the liability numbers, it's the exact same number as the other valuation. The main difference here is you're not allowed to use the asset smoothing. So everything here is based on a market value basis. So if we can move ahead to page 12. So on page 12, we have the net pension liability, which is what the terminology used under GASB 67 and 68 is basically the funded percentage. Now this is based on a market value basis. So on a market value basis, the plan has improved from 83.7% funded to 91.7%. So that's a big improvement over the last year. And again, this is at the 6.75% discount rate. Now, if the plan was less well-funded, or if the district wasn't making the fully recommended contribution, we would have to use, blend this with a municipal bond rate, which you're talking about, I don't know, 2.5% rate. You'd have a much lower interest rate. That's the case with some of those poorly funded plans you hear about in Illinois and so forth, where they're having to do that blending, and their balance sheet impact is much higher. Then going ahead to the next page, the interesting thing on here is the bottom of the page. We have the interest rate sensitivity. As I mentioned, that was the most important assumption being used for the valuation. So the middle column is at the current assumption is 675. You can see we have an unfunded liability of 29 million. If the assumption was increased to 7.75%, we would actually have a surplus of $3.6 million. And if the interest rate was more conservative, or you had a more conservative asset allocation, and the expected return was lower to 5.75%, then we'd be looking at a $68 million funding shortfall. So the higher the interest rate, the lower the liability, and the lower the interest rate, the higher the liability. So that's the main thing I wanted to show on this GASB report. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have on these numbers.
Doesn't look like there are any right now, so I'll just say to the board that if you do come up with any questions, if you're looking at this, have questions about the way any of this works or about the pension plan, just give me a call or shoot me an email, and we'll make sure that we get you an answer. All right, Bill, I think that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Tim. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. And get a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
Meeting's concluded.
Thank you, everybody, for coming in this morning.